All right, my friends, here are 5 big stories for today. So we're going to follow up on this new Ukrainian drone missile. It costs less than $1 million, which is kind of a bargain for a missile that's able to do the kind of damage it's able to do. Ukraine unveiled a new long-range weapon called the Palyanytsia, a combination of missile and drone that reportedly costs less than $1 million per unit. But most importantly, it's homegrown, so they can use it wherever they want. Fedorov described the weapon as a potential game changer that will allow Ukraine to strike where Russia doesn't expect it today. Ukrainian officials say that the weapon was created out of urgent necessity. Necessity is the mother of invention. As Western allies place restrictions on the use of their long-range missiles inside Russia because they're thinking about the reset button after the war is over. Defenders of life should have no restrictions on weapons as long as Russia uses all kinds of its weapons. I agree with that. This drone missile reportedly has a range of up to 700 kilometers or 430 miles and is comparable to US-supplied ATACMS missiles. Fyodorov emphasized that the role of the private sector in developing the new weapon, saying the private market generates solutions incredibly quickly. That's right, where there's a will, there's a way, and incentives matter, and the market's going to bring it to bear very quickly. Okay, let's look at the next thing. Russia moved 90% of its aircraft beyond ATACMS range, says the Wall Street Journal, and citing their sources. The U.S. has no plans to change its policy preventing the use of these weapons on Russian soil. Okay, so we've been talking about this for the last few days, where this map, like there are all these targets inside Russia that if you were allowed to use ATACMS weapons, they could hit. But now this drone missile might be able to do the trick. And there's another ballistic missile that they've just tested that seems like that may also do the trick as well. The ISW key takeaway, the redeployment of Russian aircraft from 16 Russian air bases in range of ATACMS does not reduce the importance of allowing Ukraine to use ATACMS against hundreds of other Russian military objects, nor does the reportedly small number of ATACMS the US has provided. So I read the other day, and I think this is exactly right. When the story of the war in Ukraine is written, one of the leading headlines will be the West was just too slow to get the aid that it needed to get to Ukraine. I mean, I think that's the reality. Okay, so we've enabled Russia by giving them time to get these materials out of the way so that they wouldn't be destroyed. So those Russians live to fight another day and destroy Ukraine in the process. The ISW identified 245 Russian military and paramilitary objects within Ukrainian ATACMS range. The ISW challenges the restrictions on long-range missile use, arguing that Russian redeployment doesn't reduce these targets' strategic value. So let's look at the actual article in Euromaidan Press, and then we'll look at the ISW's actual article that it came from. The study challenges the use of restrictions on Ukraine's use of long-range missiles. A new report by the Institute of the Study of War has identified 245 Russian military and paramilitary objects. According to the report, Politico reported on 23 August that an unnamed senior Biden administration national security official stated that Russian forces have moved some objects out of range of Western-provided Storm Shadow and ATACMS missiles. By the way, the Brits said that they can use Storm Shadows if they want. Russian forces have moved 90% of the aircraft that conduct glide bomb strikes from Russian airspace away from airfields within range of Storm Shadow and ATACMS missiles. That right there, that alone is a victory. Just like the push into Kursk is pushing the Russians back from being able to attack Sumy easily, and the number of attacks there have gone down. So incentives matter. Little bit more, the study also notes that Ukrainian officials are reportedly preparing to present senior U.S. officials with a list of objects in Russia that Ukrainian officials believe Kyiv could strike if Washington lifted its restrictions on weapons. But right now, what the list of what's most necessary that Kyiv is providing to Washington right now is, hey, our energy infrastructure was just absolutely decimated. We need help with that. Now, had they been able to do this before, they wouldn't have had that. It's a consequence of slow walking aid to Ukraine. It's marvelously frustrating. Okay, here's from the ISW. Here are the objects, the 245, and I'll just slowly scroll through this, the 22nd Separate Guards, the 39th Separate Railway Brigade, and you can read it, Artillery Armament Base, and Logistics Center, and Motor Rifle Regiment, Anti-Aircraft Missile Regiment, Radio Technical Regiment, Flight Unit, Motor Rifle Regiment, and it goes on and on. I'm just going to scroll through it so you can kind of get a sense of what's there. And there's lots of things that they could hit with the proper weapons. And they're developing the proper weapons because their allies are just not willing to budge on giving them proper weapons. They're having the discussion, but at least so far, the Biden administration continues to slow walk that because they're thinking about the reset on the other side of the war. Okay. Russian forces face difficult fight to retake Ukraine-held area in Kursk Oblast, says the deputy CIA director. 27 August, Ukraine has regained control of 1,294 square kilometers that we know of because they're being a little close to the chest of what's going on. 100 settlements in the Kursk region, with Ukrainian forces having captured 594 Russian occupiers that we know of at this point. Now, there's also another 1,000 or two somewhere in between kind of trapped, so it could get even better. We can be certain that Putin will mount a counteroffensive to try to reclaim that territory, said the CIA director. Putin is not only going to have to face the fact that there is a front line now within Russian territory that he's going to have to deal with, he has to deal with reverberations back in his own society that they have lost a piece of Russian territory. Kursk has the potential to shift the dynamics of the conflict slightly. Russian forces continue to advance into Donetsk. That's really where the action is hottest. Russia has achieved these gains at an extraordinary cost in troops and equipment and may or may not capture Pokrovst. I think all other things being equal and something changes, it looks like they're going to capture Pokrovst. It's bad in Pokrovst. I hope to talk to Greg Terry tomorrow about the situation. He was just there and he saw some wild things that he was telling me. Okay, at the end of the day, none of it is a game changer in a strategic sense for the Russians. Okay, now I saw this fascinating because this is the system within which the Russians are working. Russians complain that they get $2,200 a month to kill Ukrainians in Ukraine. That's in a special military operation, but only $340 a month to kill Ukrainians in Russia. Okay, so this comes from this guy here. He's complaining about this. He's saying, wait a minute, I'm being redeployed into Russia, and now I'm not getting paid enough to feed my family because I'm getting paid for being on Russian territory? What is going on? Okay, half of our elite regiment have died in Vovchansk, and now we've been redeployed to Kursk. Why the bleep do we get 34,000 if we're SMO participants? Who's going to take care of our families? Why are our families abandoned? So they're basically getting a pay cut if they move from inside Ukraine into defending Russia. A Russian serviceman of the 30th Governor's Regiment with the call sign Kupol considers it extremely unfair that in Ukraine a Russian soldier died for 200,000 rubles a month, while in his native Kursk region he has to die for only some measly 34,000 rubles. Kupol does not understand what is going on and demands that this mess be sorted out immediately. Now, I talked about the system that you're in. This is Lukashenko complaining that everybody wants Lukashenko on their side. The country is living in a very difficult period. The question is either or. We are now being advised, thrown in from the side. It's all coming down on me. Retreat here, liberate there. Now look at the faces of the people that don't believe what he's saying. Starting from here and ending with, to heck with this Russia, turn your back on Russia. Let's fight with Ukraine against Russia, and we'll bring NATO troops to that border near Smolensk. It comes to this. Today, I receive proposals from all sides that we, 99%, cannot accept. I don't think they believe them. So I want you to understand what kind of environment we live in and the type of situation we live in. Look at the looks on these people's faces. Do you think that they believe him, or do they know that he's lying? Do you think that she believes him? Do you think that they believe him? I don't think so. I think they know what's going on. Okay, speaking of the system that they're in, yesterday I talked about Kadyrov and his son particularly Adam. Adam is 16. He was just decorated with another award, and he received 9 different awards, medals over the last year or so. And he's also the superintendent of the Chechen Special Forces University at 16 because he's just that awesome. He's the same guy here shooting 2 golden machine guns simultaneously with both arms out because he's just that awesome. But not to be outdone by Kadyrov, Putin has just done this. This is the British intelligence update. On 17 August 2024, Russian media reported that President Vladimir Putin had promoted the daughter of his cousin, so that would be like a step-niece or second cousin, often referred to as his niece, to be State Secretary of the Ministry of Defense. She was previously appointed as Deputy Defense Minister, a role which she retains in June 2024. As State Secretary, she is elevated above ordinary Deputy Defense Minister, of whom there are an additional 7, and is responsible for the Ministry of Defense's relationship with the legislature and other governing bodies. So if we look at Wikipedia and look at how they're organized, this was the structure in 2021. Minister of Defense was Sergei Shoigu, and then you had Valery Gerasimov, and then you had another guy who we just don't hear much of, and then we have Deputy Ministers of Defense, State Secretary at the top of the pack. It's really amazing to watch this. Before 2023, she had no known background or relationship to defense matters. She is trained as a psychiatrist before making money in a number of medical supply companies. In 2023, she became chairperson of the State Foundation for Support of Participants in the Defenders of the Fatherland Special Military Operation, which organized voluntary donations in support of the war in Ukraine. And she's married to a Russian energy minister. It's who you know, not what you know, apparently, in Russia. Her original appointment in June drew muted criticism from the Russian press for the nepotism that tested even Russia's tolerance for corrupt practice. There's a realistic possibility that her further elevation is indicative of the increasing insularity of the Russian elite. They do this, they appoint relatives because they know that they can trust a relative as opposed to someone else, and that tells you that they're scared. Now, what's the negative impact of nepotism in the workplace morale? A lot of things. And if you look into the academic literature, you'll see that this is verifiable. Decreased trust and respect, reduced motivation, loss of talent, decreased employee satisfaction, poor communication. Look at that, poor communication. Some academic thought this was pretty funny. And so what's happening here in the workplace is writ large in a country. And that seems to be what Putin is doing. He's not going to let Kadyrov outshine him by appointing his 16-year-old son to the head of the Special Military Operations College in Chechnya. Oh no, he's going to do this. But don't worry, it's all going according to plan. All right, my friends, that's all that I have. Thank you for the likes, the shares, the subscribes. I really appreciate it when you hit the like button, because when you do, it tells the algorithm, hey, this is something worthwhile. When you share it, it spreads the message further and faster. And when you hit subscribe, you know that you're going to be back tomorrow, and I thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.